Hare Krishna Matjis, welcome again to our nice session on lessons learned from women in Srimad-bhagavatam. So we already started last time and we are continuing on that session. We will continue to talk about Draupadi today. So in Srimad-bhagavatam, the events are not given in chronological order like it is in Mahabharata or Ramayana. So Srimad-bhagavatam picks up instances more from the point of view of the rasa of devotion. So it is not given as in Mahabharata. So for example, Draupadi, we do not see many events of her life. We saw last time how there was the incident with Ashwatthama. Then there are other things mentioned throughout Bhagavatam. So we'll pick up some of those and see what we can learn from Draupadi. One of the things that I wanted to discuss based on what we saw last time, which was the incident of Ashwatthama, how he's brought before Draupadi Mata and then how she responds, and how that entire pastime plays out. So sometimes there is this idea, especially in India these days, they are kind of tweaking history and tweaking our scriptures to suit the current ethos. What this means is they are interpreting or misinterpreting parts of it. So I'll explain what that is. That in our Shastra, the portrayal of women is given in a certain way, but a lot of people these days, actually they're monetizing on it. They are writing novels based on Mother Sita's life, or they're showing Draupadi as a warrior queen. So they are depicting these ladies in a certain way, which is quite contrary to what is given in the scriptures. And that trend is also there in ISKCON, actually, where sometimes devotees pick up things and they start to write from this character's point of view or that character's point of view, which may not be completely authorized, because Srila Prabhupada says it's very difficult to understand the mind of a pure devotee. So how can we presume to know what they were going through? Anyway, so one of the things that I came across, which was a little hard for me to swallow, was about how Draupadi is sometimes depicted as a very bold and outspoken woman. You know, there are incidents which are quoted from her life where she has expressed an opinion, and that is given as a proof that actually men and women had more of a say in matters than it is understood. Okay, so this is not incorrect. Of course, it was not the case that women in Vedic times did not have a right to an opinion, or they did not have a right to express it. Of course, that was not the case. But the way people understand it is not in its entirety. For example, in this case, where Draupadi speaks up and she says that, oh, Ashwatthama should not be killed, and she gives certain reasons. And there are other incidents with other women in Srimad-bhagavatam. And I heard someone saying that, oh, this is very good. This really shows how women were also, allowed to speak, and how this is such a good example that they were speaking to higher authorities. So agreed, that is good. But the point that is not mentioned here is that there is a certain etiquette that is followed. And we see that we just pick up this point that, oh, women would also be allowed to express their opinion. And then we tend to apply it to our life in a way that, yes, we just go ahead and express that opinion. but there were certain rules about how this should be done. And these are not rules to suppress someone, but it is a rule or an etiquette which is meant for the smooth functioning of society, particularly a spiritual society, because there is so much more need of peaceful atmosphere in a spiritual organization or a spiritual community. Because if your mind is not at peace, it is very difficult to practice spirituality. So in this case, we see that Mother Draupadi spoke her mind. Does this mean that she's a brash, outspoken person who, whenever she has something to say, she'll just say it in front of everybody? No, that's not how Vedic society functioned. Women did have their say, but either it would be amongst people that they are close to. For example, if a husband and wife is alone, then the wife will express herself, or a girl may speak to her friends or respectfully to her mother or sister. But it doesn't mean that if king and queen are sitting in the court and the king says something and the queen will also have her opinion and she'll speak it out, or even in a family setting where the whole family is sitting, everybody, if there's a serious thing being discussed, everybody will chime in, from the children to the ladies to the men, and then everybody is having a discussion which becomes, typically, it may become into an argument because different people means there will be different opinions. So how do we understand? How did it really function? So what would happen is that, yes, women would speak, but they would wait till they were asked to speak, or that it was a setting where it was expected that they would speak. For example, in this case, it was Draupadi's children who were killed. She was given a promise that the killer will be brought to justice. So it was natural that she would have something to say on this matter. She was very aggrieved. So in that sense, it was perfectly all right. But it doesn't mean that Draupadi in general and the ladies were the kind who would be very, like I said, outspoken. They would just say things. And we have some evidence for this in the scriptures. So in the 10th canto, chapter 83 is a description about when everybody congregated at Kurukshetra for a festival. And at that time, Draupadi asked the queens of Lord Krishna to relate how they got married to Krishna. So there's a very nice description. All the queens mention how their swayamvar happened or kidnapping happened. So all those details are given. There's a nice conversation. Now the next chapter begins with this verse. This is 1084:1. Sukhdev Goswami said, Pritha, Gandhari, Draupadi, Subhadra, and some other people are mentioned, were all amazed to hear of the queen's deep love for Lord Krishna. Okay, so there are 4 people who are mentioned particularly: Pritha, that is Kunti Mata, Gandhari, Draupadi, and Subhadra. So they all were amazed when they heard the descriptions of how Lord Krishna married his wives. But in the purport, it is mentioned that Sridhar Swami mentions Draupadi is the chief hero in this assembly of exalted women. Since, as explained by Srila Sridhar Swami, she had asked the question that Lord Krishna's queens answered by relating their respective stories. Since Gandhari and the other ladies named here were not even mentioned in the previous chapter as having been present, Acharya Sridhar concludes that they must have heard the queen's narrations only secondhand. So, although their names are mentioned, that Kunti and Gandhari were amazed, but actually they were not there when Draupadi was talking to the queens. And why is this point significant? Because they go on to explain. Indeed, Draupadi would never have spoken so freely in the presence of Pritha and Gandhari, her elders. So that's the point. What would she have not spoken freely? She was just asking the queens, how did you get married? What transpired? Just this. It's not that she was saying something very controversial, but even this, she would not speak freely in the presence of Mother Kunti or Gandhari. So you see, such was the level of etiquette that was followed, that they would be respectful to the elders and they would allow them to speak. They would hear from them rather than give their own opinion or have their own conversations. But when they are alone, it was different. Just like we see that Draupadi was very friendly to the queens and they had this nice conversation. So obviously, when Draupadi is going to be very careful in speaking in front of other elderly ladies, of course, in the assembly of men, she would be even more careful, right? So, why I bring out this point is because sometimes Draupadi is misrepresented as a very brash, bold, independent thinking woman, which, of course, she's very strong as a person, no doubt. Most of the ladies that we are going to discuss in Srimad-bhagavatam are amazing personalities, very strong, we'll see the strength of their character, but that does not always translate into rough speech. Quite the opposite. It is an indication of their strength, that they are tolerant. In fact, they do not speak whatever is on their mind, or when they do, they speak with proper etiquette. Like we saw in the previous sections, even when Draupadi is putting forth her points, she addresses Arjuna as Dharmagya, Mahabhag. She says, "O most fortunate one who know the principles of religion." And they always address like, "Oh my Lord, oh Swami." So the point that we always make, that women would also have their say, absolutely. That is an important point to make, because on the other hand, some people misrepresent that in Vedic times, women were not allowed to speak. They were suppressed so much. And sometimes people translate that into modern times. They think we are devotees, we are following Vedic culture, which means the women should be just quiet and they should just do as they are told. So that's not how things function then. Women did have a right to their opinion, but equally important is to understand how this opinion has to be expressed. This was a point that I wanted to bring forth. And then another example is given that, but what about when Draupadi was in the assembly of the Kauravas, and how she spoke and she asked everybody to intervene. So of course we cannot take such things. That was exceptional circumstances, and it was perfectly fine that she spoke up in that assembly, because the people who were supposed to protect her were unable to do so. So she appealed to the elders, and then also in a very respectful way, not like blaming them and using any kind of disrespectful words. So these things are important for us to understand. So the next thing we want to discuss about Draupadi is, and also somewhat related to this topic, about how she was very careful in her speeches, about how she was such a chaste woman. Srila Prabhupada often quotes throughout Bhagavatam that how just like Mother Sita followed Lord Ram to the forest, similarly Draupadi, she was a princess. She did not have to go. It was her husbands who had to go, but she also followed them. So it's a mark of her chastity. In 9th Canto, Chapter 10, verse 27 purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions particularly, Draupadi was one of the 5 exalted chaste women. As a man must follow great personalities like Brahma and Narada, a woman must follow the path of such ideal women as Sita, Mandodari, and Draupadi. So Srila Prabhupada mentions how she was very chaste. And there's a very wonderful passage in this context, which is called Draupadi Satyabhama Samvad. This is a section of the Mahabharata where there is a conversation between Draupadi and Satyabhama. This is also mentioned by Srila Prabhupada in Srimad-bhagavatam. When he mentions in one of the purports, Satyabhama is described because personalities as they appear, a brief introduction is given. So in chapter 1, verse 14, first canto, chapter 14, verse 37, it is mentioned about Satyabhama. Once, along with her husband, she met Draupadi, and she was anxious to be instructed by Draupadi in the ways and means of pleasing her husband. Draupadi was expert in this affair because she kept 5 husbands, the Pandavas, and all were very much pleased with her. On receipt of Draupadi's instructions, she was very much pleased and offered her good wishes and returned to Dwarka. So this incident is mentioned by Srila Prabhupada because it's very significant. We can find details of what was actually discussed in Mahabharata, and I would recommend that you please read it up because it's very inspiring. Satyabhama asks Draupadi that how is it that your husbands are so pleased with you? I also want that Krishna should be always very happy with me. And what can I do? Is it that you have some kind of mystic power that you are controlling them? Is it some mantras or some herbs? What is your secret? And Draupadi is upset. She says, no, I'm not using any magic. And then she starts to explain how the secret of her pleasing her husbands is by serving them so nicely. How she's the first one awake every morning, the last one to sleep. She personally serves them, how she takes care of all the household things. And in that, it's mentioned how she's careful about her speech, she's never angry, irritable, never talks ill about her mother-in-law. So many nice things are mentioned. So this is a great lesson for all of us, how Mother Draupadi went through so many hardships in her life. And another person would, of course, blame the husbands, nag them, get upset, but she was very chaste, very humble, tolerant, and she just went on with her service. And in that way, everybody was appreciative of her. So that is a very nice thing we can learn from Mother Draupadi, something inspiring. And the main thing that I want to mention, focus on in this class is how Draupadi is a wonderful devotee. So this is mentioned by Srila Prabhupada in the second canto. Srila Prabhupada mentions in the context of how devotees of Lord Krishna are in fact superior to mystic yogis. So this is in Canto 2, Chapter 8, verse 20. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions, Maharaj Ambarish was a pure devotee of the Lord, and thus without any effort on his part, the Lord saved him from the wrath of Yogeshwar Durvasa Muni. And the latter was obliged to beg pardon from the king. So first, Srila Prabhupada mentions about Ambarish Maharaj. Then he says, similarly, at the time of Draupadi's precarious position, when she was attacked by the Kurus who wanted to see her naked in the open assembly of the royal order, the Lord saved her from being stripped by supplying an unlimited length of sari to cover her. And Draupadi knew nothing of mystic powers. Therefore, the devotees are also Yogeshwars by the unlimited power of the Lord, just as a child is powerful by the strength of the parents. They do not try to protect themselves by any artificial means, but are saved by the mercy of the parents. So here Srila Prabhupada glorifies Draupadi. In the earlier section also, where we were talking about, Srila Prabhupada had said that she has the symptoms of a pure devotee. That's why she's so compassionate. And here he mentions the incident of when the Kauravas tried to insult her, humiliate her, but how Lord Krishna came to her rescue. So Srila Prabhupada expands on this in a lecture. This is given in 1973 in Los Angeles on the verse 1.8.24 on April 16th. So it's a lecture on the verse 1.8.24 given in 1973. So Srila Prabhupada explains, Draupadi was being naked, sari was being taken away, and the sari would not be finished. Krishna was supplying sari, so they became tired in trying to make her naked. They could understand it is impossible. And Draupadi was also, first of all, trying to save the cloth. But what can she do? She is woman, and there were two men, Karna and Dushasan, was trying to make her naked. So she was crying and praying to Krishna, save my honor. But she was trying also herself to save. So she's praying, but she's also holding on to her cloth. When she thought that it is impossible to save myself, my honor in this way, then she left the hands. She simply got up her hands and prayed, Krishna, if you like, you can save. And now Srila Prabhupada explains. So this is the position. So long as we try to save ourselves, that is not very good. If we simply depend on Krishna, Krishna, if you save me, that is all right. Otherwise, kill me as you like. You see, Marobi Rakhobi Jo Ichha Tumhar. So this is from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So Srila Prabhupada is explaining how Draupadi teaches us the lesson of being fully dependent on Krishna. So this is a very important lesson that we learn from Draupadi, because although we are intentionally going to focus a lot on the duties of women, and these are important, these are non-different from our spiritual duties, because in one sense, when we are practicing Krishna consciousness, everything is dovetailed for Krishna's service. So our duties are also such that they help us in our spiritual life. So it's not separate. But at the same time, there is a very important aspect of our life, which is our sadhana, which is our own spiritual practice, which is separate from our material duties. So even though we are going to focus on the instructions given specifically to women, but all of scripture is filled with instructions for our spiritual life. So it is not something different. And it's not that we just focus on being good mothers, good wives, and full stop. This is great. It's good because definitely we are still doing our duty and it will be beneficial for us. But the real benefit is when this goes side by side with our spiritual life. So we should not neglect one for the other. In fact, at a later stage in life, this is what we have to really, enhance. It is more and more we will lose our focus on our material duties and then focus more on our spiritual life. Gradually, that's how the Varnashram system is set up. But this is an important lesson that we learn from Mother Draupadi, that our devotion is important, that our bhakti lata has to be nourished, and that is essential. And that's what Srila Prabhupada is explaining, that this attitude of surrender that is embodied in this particular pastime of Draupadi, that is something we should always keep in mind. And as women, we should not make excuses that, we have so many duties, so it's fine. Also, the men are supposed to be the leaders in the house, and if I just serve my family, that's enough. Of course, that is what Srila Prabhupada says, that if the husband is a good devotee and the wife simply serves the husband, that's perfection. But he never says that you do not do your sadhana. that yes, you serve the husband, and at the same time, you follow the instructions given, particularly about spiritual life, which is chanting 16 rounds, reading, um, discussing, hearing of the wonderful pastimes. So all this must go on. We should never neglect this. As far as our duties are concerned, we are discussing that. And at the same time, we have to keep in mind that it is all for this goal that our sadhana is better and better. So what we see from Mother Draupadi's life is how she's a wonderful devotee. We see so much reciprocation from Lord Krishna, and that's because of her wonderful character, her devotion towards the Lord. And how that culminates is also mentioned in Bhagavatam. So that is what was Draupadi's ultimate destination. In first canto, 15th chapter, verse 50, it is mentioned. Draupadi also saw that her husbands, without caring for her, were leaving home. She knew well about Lord Vasudeva, Krishna, the personality of God, because a lifetime spent in devotion. So at the end of the life, everything is clear. Both she and Subhadra became absorbed in thoughts of Krishna and attained the same result as their husbands. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. When flying an airplane, one cannot take care of other planes. Everyone has to take care of his own plane. And if there is any danger, no other plane can help another in that condition. Similarly, at the end of life, when one has to go back home, back to Godhead, everyone has to take care of himself without help rendered by another. The help is, however, offered on the ground before flying in space. So it's not that when we are practicing spiritual life, we don't take help. That's not what it means. Prabhupada is clarifying that this analogy that you have to fly your own plane is particularly relevant at the end of one's life. The help is, however, offered on the ground before flying in space. Similarly, the spiritual master, the father, the mother, the relatives, the husband, and others can all render help during one's lifetime. But while crossing the sea, one has to take care of himself and utilize the instructions formally received. So at the end of the life, whatever we have done throughout the life, we'll see the culmination of that. Draupadi had 5 husbands and no one asked Draupadi to come. Draupadi had to take care of herself without waiting for her great husbands. And because she was already trained, she at once took to concentration upon the lotus feet of Lord Vasudeva Krishna, the personality of God. The wives also got the same result as their husbands in the same manner. That is to say, without changing their bodies, they reached the destination of Godhead. None of them had to quit the body. So, this is an important point that we learn from this pastime, that we should always be cognizant that our spiritual life is our own responsibility. It's wonderful whatever help we get, and we should seek help, but never lose sight of the fact that ultimately it depends on us. So we should not make excuses of our circumstances. Of course, circumstances can be difficult, but we should be cognizant that whatever the situation, we are in this situation, we know we are responsible for being in a particular situation. And whatever we make of it also depends on us. So by all means, we should seek help while we are practicing. But remember that at the end of the life, even a great personality like Draupadi, who had wonderful husbands, they realized that, okay, time has come, so they just left. And then Draupadi had to bring forth all the instructions, all the devotion, and then on her own merit, she was also successful in reaching the ultimate destination. So the lesson we learn from this is that all people, men and women, have the responsibility for their own spiritual life. We have to do our duty. At the same time, we should not lose track of this wonderful gift that is given to us by Srila Prabhupada. We should not be negligent about our sadhana. And we have to understand that even when we have the most wonderful husband, at the end of our life, the test is going to be, we have to sit for the examination. You know how you go for the exam, you've taken all the tutoring and everything, but ultimately, that's it. You're sitting, the paper is in front of you, and it depends how well you have prepared for it. So our life's exam will come at the end of our life, and it's not something we can cram at the last minute. It's a whole lifetime of training. So we should be so serious about how we spend our time. We should always be cognizant that this is very, very fortunate that we are even hearing about these things. Otherwise, so many lifetimes we have wasted. So we should be cognizant about what is our nature as a woman, how easy it is to get attached, and for both men and women in Grihastashram, how easy it is to be absorbed in household affairs. But then, if we always remain in touch with Srila Prabhupada through his devotees, through his books and lectures, that we are constantly reminded that there's a higher goal. So we should think about it. We should spend time during the day. First thing in the morning, last thing is at night. Think about what our aim in life is. Move towards. Hare Krishna, thank you. We will pause our discussion here. So we discussed today about how we should be careful about non-devotees and devotees sometimes misrepresenting the women of Vedic times to be like the modern independent women. So we should be very careful not to fall in that trap. We learned about how Mother Draupadi was so chaste, and it was so inspiring, even for devotees like Satyabhama to hear about her mood of service and humility. We saw about the wonderful devotion of Draupadi and how that led her to her ultimate destination. It's a very, very inspiring personality. We are so fortunate that Srila Prabhupada has helped us to understand some of the nuances of a wonderful character. Hare Krishna, we'll take questions and answers now. So I'll request Mridu Mataji to please help coordinate with that. Matajis, if you have questions, you can please raise your hands, or you can write in the chat box. Then Mridu Mataji can read them aloud and we can discuss. So please feel free. And if any of you have something personal to discuss, please do not hesitate. We can also edit it out later, so please don't worry about it. Hare Krishna.
Also, there is an option to post your question anonymously. So if anybody doesn't want to share their name, then they can post that question anonymously and I can read that out.
Yeah, it's a good option.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. I had this question since you had explained so well about the personality and character of Draupadi. So when we look at her life, all her 5 husbands, they were devotees. And when we look at our lives, some of us do not have husbands or family members who are devotees. So how do we navigate through this whole thing of serving in spite of having husbands who are non-devotees?
Okay. Um, what do you mean specifically by serving? As in, do you mean that how do we serve people who are sometimes not very, uh, not a very good character, or they're not so devotional, and we find it hard to serve such people? Is that your specific question?
Yes, when I say they're not devotional, they may be supportive, but they're not devotional. They may not be responsible like we expect, male members to be responsible with regard to providing for the family. So
Yes,
there's a kind of strain that comes in the relationship because of the inequality that is set in, because of
correct.
various aspects. This is just one aspect that I'm speaking of.
Yeah,
It could also be
yeah,
compatibility, it could also be interests, lots of things.
yes,
It's just an example I'm saying. So,
sure.
yes, Mataji.
Actually, yeah, that's quite a big thing, if they are not responsible, because you see, in Vedic culture, the dynamics is such that the wife nicely serves and the husband nicely provides. These are the two main things. Now, when we talk about natures, it may be that the husband is irritable, or the wife is, careless. She's not very good at cooking, or some small character problems may be there, but these are not reasons for not doing our duty. For example, if there is a wife who is, just, some people are like scatterbrains, they're not very careful. He gives her money and she loses it, or she spends too much money, she forgets to take change. So the husband may feel a bit annoyed with her. Or the wife is serving very nicely, but the husband is just, he's just an irritable person, or he's just indifferent. He just comes back. He doesn't even notice she's made something special. He's always preoccupied with something else. So these are there, but these are not reasons to not do our duty. Like the husband who has such a scatterbrained wife should still provide for her, because that's his duty. And the wife should still continue to cook and take care of the household for a husband who is not, emotionally that compatible with her, or he's just not very attentive. Yeah, these things are there, but that's not reason to not do your duty. You see, that's what Vedic scriptures explain, that in the modern world, it is more about rights, that this is my right, I should get this, I should get that. But you'll find that Vedic scriptures are always about this is your duty. So they don't say that you should not do your duty if people are not doing theirs around you. No. In fact, it is considered more exalted if you are doing your duty in harder circumstances. And it's not that we are glorifying suffering, but the point is that even if there are difficult circumstances, you are doing your duty. Unlike the modern world where they'll say, oh, you're such a loser, you should get out of it. What are you getting out of it? But in seeing from the point of view of scriptures, you will understand that if you are doing what is right, you are never the loser. You're building strength of character, and you will get the benefit of that. Of course, all this we have to understand is in the context of what is your goal in life. If your goal in life is to achieve love of Krishna, then all these things make sense. Even if you are suffering, not excessive suffering, but these kind of things are there, that people are in your family are not favorable, they are not doing their duty, but you are going on doing, but that will help you. If you understand these things, then you will be calm. You will think, okay, this is my circumstance, I accept it, and I'm going to focus on my main duty, which is to develop love for Krishna, to do all the things that are favorable for that. So if you see the typical life of a devotee, of a devotee woman. She's cooking for Krishna, she's cleaning her house for Krishna, she's bringing up her children as devotees of Krishna, she's distributing prasadam even to her non-devotee family members. She is busy, she is occupied, usefully occupied. So even if she's in difficult circumstances, she's doing what is right and she will derive satisfaction out of it. So you understand? This means that if you do your duty, that is the important thing. That's what scriptures teach us. There are innumerable stories of how women who have done their duty like this in certain circumstances have benefited. And we see it in our day-to-day life also, that it will only be helpful. So then the other thing is that if the husband is completely irresponsible, that does become very difficult because, it has to work both ways. You can only do your duty nicely if at least your husband is providing, because if you're supposed to take care of the house, then it means someone should be giving you the support to do that, right? So it is unfortunate that, yes, in Kali Yuga, many times we come across men who are not responsible. What to do then? Then you try to take help from people around you. Can emphasize that just like you are told to do your duty, the Prabhu has to do his part, or your husband has to do his part. So it's not easy. It can be a very difficult situation if a woman is in a situation where she really wants to do her part, but the husband is not doing his part. But I would suggest that at least we weigh it out. If is he being totally irresponsible, not giving anything to the wife, and then or is it a case that, like I said, that he's just emotionally not there, or occasionally displaying traits of character which are less than ideal? In that case, it may not be that serious, because to be honest, we all are less than ideal at this point, most of us. So we all have our shortcomings, and there are times when we behave badly, and what to do? We are trying to improve. So we should also be accepting and tolerant of people around us when they're less than ideal, and try not to be very judgmental. How to serve when people are less than ideal? We can start by focusing on the fact that we ourselves may be less than ideal, or at one point we were like that and we have improved our lives. So we can hope that the people around us also will eventually improve. But more, it would be helpful if we are not very judgmental and more accepting of our circumstances. That would help. And really focus on our own duty. And if we really give time and attention to developing our spiritual life, that gives so much satisfaction that we'll have less bandwidth to focus on negative things. That helps.
Thank you, Mataji. It was a wonderful answer. Thank you so much. Haribo.
Mataji, there's a question in the chat box from Upasana Mataji. She's writing, Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Is it wrong for a woman to be independent, bold, and open-minded?
Open-minded, definitely not, because we have to be, you cannot come in Krishna consciousness if you're not open-minded, because Krishna consciousness is completely different from what people around us are telling us these days. So you have to be very open-minded. It's never wrong for anybody to be open-minded. Prabhupada himself says that we should be broad-minded. That means you should look at people for who they are, not be judgmental, look at their good qualities. This is all a symptom of being broad-minded. That means you don't think I'm doing the right thing and everyone else is wrong. You should always be open to new ideas. So no, there's nothing wrong in being open-minded, nothing wrong in being bold, because boldness is also a symptom of strength. Being bold means that I know life is hard, things are going to be thrown in my way and I have to deal with them. So that's good. And particularly in today's world, we may face a lot of difficulties. So boldness is required. Sometimes we are left in a situation, even if we have a big family, some emergency may happen, and as a lady, you may have to serve your in-laws by taking them to the hospital, for example. So at that time, you can't be, getting cold feet like, oh, what should I do? What should I do? My husband is not here. Nobody's here. And you get scared. So the situation is like this, that we are not in kind of communities that were there earlier where there were a lot of people who would help. So sometimes we have to accept that responsibility. So a little bit of boldness is required. And then you said independent. Independent, it depends what you mean by that. If it means that you do not take support from anybody in your life, that can be a little difficult because a woman's nature is a little soft and she requires support. She's happiest when she has support around her. Whereas a man, they are by nature such that they like to go and figure things out and, work in solitary, in isolation. That's fine. I mean, they can do things by themselves. But women generally, they like a support group. They are more happy. Like when we go for service, you'll find that a group of Matajis go and they are talking and doing service. That's what they like to do. Like when my daughters want to go anywhere, they always ask all their friends, you come with me, you come with me. So they'll make a big group and go. So that's the nature of it. So if you say, is it bad if she's independent? It's not good or bad. It's a little difficult for women to be independent. It's also a bit impractical because in general, women are vulnerable. So for example, a young woman is staying alone. It's always a bit risky because there may be some people who want to take advantage. So it's not very advisable. So firstly, from a woman's point of view, you'll find that it's very nice to have that taste of independence where you don't have to answer to anybody, but it also comes with its own problems. And perhaps the problems outweigh the pleasure that we get from that independence. So we sometimes put ourselves in a very risky position for the sake of that independence. And is it worth it? Because being dependent on someone is not bad if they are actually taking care of you. And I find that more often than not, people are happy to take care of other people. They feel good, just like a mother likes to take care of her children. So it's not that she wants that her children are independent, right from a young age, they do everything. No, there's a sweet exchange when a child wants the affection of the mother makes something nice for the child. So similarly, between husband and wife, it can be really nice between children and parents. So there's nothing wrong in being dependent. It's just we feel afraid because we feel that somebody will take advantage. But that doesn't always have to be the case. There are more often good people than bad in the world. And it also depends on how we react or behave, and they will react accordingly. So on an average, if you're good to people, chances are that they'll be good back to you. So that's the whole thing about independence. And it's not really innate to a woman's nature. It's kind of thrust upon us in today's world, but it may not be the best thing. And about boldness, we will discuss it in the next few classes. But in brief, it is good, but again, it depends on how you actually, how does that translate in action? Just like we were talking about Draupadi, that she's bold, she has an opinion and she expresses it, but she expresses it very respectful. So that's important, that even if you are a very strong person, it doesn't mean you have to be rough in your speech. You can still be strong and opinionated but present your opinion in a nice way to people. So does that answer your question, Upasana? These are not bad things, but we have to see the situation. And maybe boldness and independence is not really all the time. Thanks.
Hare Krishna Mataji, there is an anonymous question, and there are two parts to the question. One is about marriage, where Mataji wants to understand what should I even think before making someone my partner, how to ever be sure of correct partner, and that surety should be mine or of my parents. That's first part of the question. The other part of the question is how to always be happy while doing duty in work and as a wife.
So the first part is how to be sure. That's very difficult. How can you be sure? You can never be fully sure. That means you do your homework. When you have to find a life partner, then you have to understand it's not just the person, it's his background. So you do a background check, you find out about his family, find out a little more from people who know the person, how he is as a person, how's the nature. Then you find out whether they are financially stable, or of course, most important should be how they are as devotees. So all these things have to be considered. Then you match the horoscope. So you cannot be 100% sure, but there are techniques. There's a very nice questionnaire that is prepared by JPS office here in Mayapur. Very extensive questionnaire.
Follow-up question. It's also written that what if that person is a non-devotee? Person that you're in a relationship with is a non-devotee. Yes.
So, so the questionnaire gives a lot of insight into what the other person thinks about various topics. So all this research must be done beforehand. So then at least more or less, you know, whether the person is, to some extent, you can understand the person. That's how we try to go about this. And your question was whether the surety should be ours or our parents. Was that the question?
Yes.
Okay. So everybody has to be involved in this process. You know, your parents have to do their own, like I said, research. They should meet with the family or people who know, because they have wisdom to look at things from a different point of view. But at the same time, you can perhaps understand some things about Krishna consciousness better than them if you are a devotee and your parents are not. So it has to be in conjunction with together, the parents and the person who's getting married has to figure this out. How can you be sure? You can never, at the end of the day, you cannot be sure. Once you have from your side tried to, understand all these things, and you find that things are favorable and you go ahead, then you have to accept. You have to pray to Krishna that I'm doing everything that my seniors have advised me. After this, it's in your hands and my fate. You have to accept that whatever happens, it's just the way things are. So you go with that attitude and you go with the positive attitude of whatever the situation, I'll make the best of it. I'll try my hardest. Then things should work out, because you should not have unrealistic expectations of, big romance and everything being perfect. So if you go into a relationship of marriage with your eyes open, taking proper advice, so it should not be a problem. There is no surety. The important thing is to have acceptance that this is what is my fate, and I'm going to make the best of it. There is no situation which is perfect. This is the material world. It's dukhalayam ashashvatam. It is full of misery and it is temporary. So that's true with most things in the world. Relationships are temporary, in the sense that at some point your partner may leave. So even if you have a very good relationship, it comes to an end. and it can be difficult. So we have to accept whatever life throws at us. Do not think that there is any surety of finding the perfect situation. It will not happen. So if you go with that, not that one should get depressed about it, but just be realistic that this is how it is. You try to find the most favorable, but then if there are small discrepancies or difference of opinions about things, you have to work through. That's the thing. What if it's a non-devotee? I didn't understand. What is the question? That if the relationship is with a non-devotee?
Yes.
It's generally not recommended to get into a relationship with a non-devotee or marry a non-devotee, because it will make life very difficult. If the whole understanding of Krishna consciousness is to make it part of our life, live life the way that this is our goal of life. If the goals are different, it becomes really hard, because you want to achieve love of Krishna and the husband wants to have a very enjoyable life. So the decisions will be very difficult, very different. If you're already in a situation like this, it's different. But if you have the choice, then try to marry a devotee who at least understands that what the goal of life should be. Many things change with that. How you're going to bring up the children, where you're going to work, how much you're going to work, how much money. So many things are affected by what you're being aiming by. I'm sorry, I forgot. What was the second question?
Second question was regarding how to strike a balance between work, office, and household work, family and work, basically.
Yeah, that's very difficult. It's hard because as women, we are wired to be very strongly attached to our children's lives and what's happening with them. We also have certain expectations of how the house should be. Like, you want a pretty house, you want a well-functioning house. It may not affect the men so much, but women generally have expectations about the house, and they want to spend more time with the children. So it becomes difficult. It becomes difficult to strike that balance, especially once you have children. Earlier, it's different. If you're single, if you're staying with your parents and working, it's different. Or if you're newly married, don't have children. But as soon as children come in the picture, the dynamics change completely. It becomes difficult. So how to strike the balance? Try to avoid being in a situation where you have to strike the balance. If possible, if you can live on your husband's income, try to manage with that. Or like I always say, try to have some work which you can manage from home, a work from home situation, a part-time, freelance, something like that. There are many options now which work on the internet. If you really need more money, then look for an option that you can do it from home. It will be easier to strike that balance if you're around at home. Even if you have help at home, you can supervise and take care in that way. It's better. That's a practical way of striking the balance. But at some point, consider stepping away from work outside. It's difficult because it's not just striking the balance between home and work. It's your sadhana, home, and work. There are three things. So it's difficult.
Mataji, there is a question from Dheer Lalita Mataji. She writes, Hare Krishna Mataji Pranam. Mataji, I am married and there are some devotees who ask me to do a job. I have no desire to do that. Now, how shall I reply?
But it's really up to you and your husband, your parents to make this decision. I don't see why other devotees should be pressuring you to take a job. Maybe they just feel that it would be beneficial for you. You don't have to get into an argument with anybody. You You can explain how you are satisfied in your current situation, how you are, I assume you are spending time on your sadhana, doing scriptural study, which is a very nice thing. It's very important. If you are young, then this is the time you will create the foundation for the understanding which will help you throughout your life. This is the time. You should read a lot, you should hear a lot. Afterwards, we will become more busy. Being in a family, responsibilities only increase. It goes like this. When we are younger, we have less responsibilities, then they peak at one time, and then when the children leave the home, it again becomes less. So, but in that process where they are peaking, it becomes very hard to do some of the devotional activities. So if you are young, I would encourage you to spend more time in doing direct devotional service. And you should express the same to these devotees who are asking you to work. What are their reasons? What are your reasons for not being keen to do it? You know, it is not just that I don't want to take up the difficulty of going to work, which is also a valid concern. Actually, in our movement, both men and women, they're recommended not to work very hard outside, because we have to preserve our time and energy for engaging in Krishna's service. So that's for both. And particularly for women, because you have responsibilities in the house. So who's going to do it? When you have children, I don't know whether you have or not, who's going to take care of them? It's a very, very important responsibility. Prabhupada says child worship is more important than deity worship. Very famously, he said this to a devotee. We take Prabhupada's instructions to heart, and we understand how that's very practical. So generally, working outside is not very conducive. And you should give your reasons to the devotees who are asking. I know many Matajis who are in this situation. Recommending to work. You should ask them what their reasons. Maybe they're advising because they feel you don't have family responsibilities right now, so you can assist your husband. Sometimes Matajis feel guilty. I know that there are Matajis who feel, oh, my husband is working so hard and I should also help contribute the family income. Well, you should work very hard at home. You should not feel guilty. You should make everything at home so nice for your husband, for your children. And that is a very big contribution. That's something to consider. Let's talk.
Thank you, Mataji. Mataji, there's a question from Shalini Mataji. She writes, how to deal with the non-devotee in-laws, especially when they tend to disrespect, try to manipulate things to suit their purpose and not showing love and acceptance, are more towards what could not be done and never be satisfied no matter how much you serve them. How do we continue our duties towards them with peaceful mind? Because in such situations, our ego comes in between and we feel hurt, dejected, and yet it is expected out of us to behave properly and fulfill our duties towards them. How do we do that, and how to share such situation with the husband without ill talking about in-laws?
But the first thing you can do is to accept the situation for what it is. You know, sometimes elderly people are very set in their ways. So they will not understand or appreciate what you're doing, particularly people who are pious. They think anyway they are also very religious, and what you are doing is a bit excessive. So maybe they don't understand fully what you're doing, or they follow some other kind of rituals, and they feel what you're doing is not really authorized or good, whatever the case be. The point is, as you're saying, they do not appreciate what you're doing, and they may be disparaging about it. So the first thing you can do is just accept it, that, okay, maybe this is not going to change. Maybe they will never appreciate what I'm doing. But in your heart, you should know that you're doing the right thing, and you should get satisfaction just from that. If you're following your duty nicely, then at least your husband will see that. And when I mean, how should you express it to your husband? The point is, should you express it to your husband? Because what is the point? You know, it's not that he's going to be able to change his parents also. Sometimes in certain extreme things, it can help if your husband can intervene. If they are insisting that you, for example, cook non-veg and non-vegetarian food, then maybe if you tell your husband and he tells them that no, this is not acceptable. So rather than you saying no, it's better if he expresses it, or like lay down certain boundaries, because sometimes things can be quite difficult. So in that sense, you can take your husband's help and support. But in general, things like they are not appreciative or they are complaining, and then should you complain to your husband? No, please don't. Yes, it is hard. It does feel that they are not appreciating, you are doing your best, but that's just how the situation is. So if you accept, I do find that if one is accepting and tolerant, then over a period of time, things change. Nobody is so hard-hearted that they will just see that you're making these efforts and then, you know, they just don't care about it. Or maybe they have very high expectations, which you just can't fulfill. Like they think that you should always be, you know, watching TV with them or taking them out and or sitting and chit-chatting with them. And of course, you have your own duties or at home, or you have to spend time on your sadhana. So you may not be able to go with them and do what they want you to do. So therefore, they will be dissatisfied. That's something you cannot change. But on your part, if you're doing your duty properly, please derive satisfaction from that. That's it. Do not think that they have to say that you are such a nice daughter, or you're doing so much. Maybe it will not happen because your expectations are different. But so you cannot do anything to change them, but you can manage your own expectations. Stop expecting that they will be appreciative of your efforts. Just think that it's not going to happen. And think that this is my duty, I'm going to go on to it. I don't know about you, but I've seen many people in my family who had cranky in-laws, but they just continued to serve, and eventually, of course, being elderly, they will leave. But at least you did your duty nicely. That's nice. That's how society functions. We still have the culture where we take care of the elderly. I think it's a very important thing to do. It's a good example for our children. It's a nice thing about Indian culture. I was just seeing a documentary yesterday about loneliness, how this is a huge problem in the modern world, because smaller families, sometimes single parents, or they had nice husband and wife were together, but eventually one spouse leaves and then they're left alone. Children are grown up, busy with their own lives. So I was thinking about it that in India, it's happening more and more, but at least still there are families who take care of the elderly. The elderly know that, okay, they will go, they have several children, they'll spend time the last few years of their life with one or the other child. And it's a nice thing. So, but it's hard. It can be hard when they are irritable, cranky. Just accept it, go on with your duty. It's a nice thing to do. Yeah, we talked about this. We had one class on how to deal with non-devotee in-laws. But I would recommend just manage your own expectations at least. That would be it.
Mataji, there is an anonymous question. I have heard that wife should not try to hurt a man's ego. She should always try to satisfy husband's ego. What exactly does this mean, and how should we try to incorporate it practically into our life? Does this also mean that we should not express our opinion that oppose husband's opinion, or should not try to correct him?
Okay, so what this means in a general terms is that do not try to show that your husband is wrong. Okay, so definitely you should not, for example, something happens and, you know, you were saying that we should go by this route and your husband takes the other route and then you get late and you shouldn't say, see, I told you, we should have gone by that route. So that will hurt his ego. So do not prove him wrong, or if he is proved wrong, don't like rub it in his face that, see, I told you so. So things like that, that's hurting a person's ego. Nobody likes to be told that they are wrong. And in general, don't disagree. It will hurt the ego if you are very, I would say, very, a bit disrespectful and rude, because see how we are with people our own age. We are very casual and we'll correct them. We'll always give our own opinion about things. But if we behave the same way with our husband, then he does not feel that we have any respect for him. So it's not that we cannot disagree. It depends on how you want to put it forth. You should learn to be diplomatic. That's the important thing about egos, how to deal with situations. For example, if your husband has an opinion about how you should make investments, so you can start the discussion by saying that I understand that you have more experience in this matter. You must be discussing with other Prabhus. So I'm sure you have given it a lot of thought. But, I heard from so-and-so that this is a good opportunity. So what do you think, Patidev? Is this something that we could look into? So even if you're giving your opinion, if at the end of it, you give the control back to your husband to make the final decision, which is the proper way. In Vedic culture, it is the person who is older in status or age who is given the responsibility to make decisions. So of course you can give your opinion, but allow your husband to make the final decision. And again, it depends. Like, it doesn't mean in every situation, if you have to buy something for the house or if it's something related to the children, maybe you can take the final decision. But in certain other spheres, let the husband take the lead. That's what it means. Like, let him feel that he's the leader. Even if I have to buy something for the house, I know my husband is not going to say no, but I always consult him. I always ask him, is it okay if we buy this or if we buy that? So I know he's not going to say no, but it's a nice thing to give him that respect that you are the decision maker and I accept what you say. I think that's what it really means, that do not hurt the ego. Let the husband know that he is the one who is leading the family. And it's nice when you give somebody that responsibility, automatically they will like to rise to that and be good leaders. So it's not a bad thing. It's nice if you have someone who is taking decisions. A woman's nature, she's happy to follow. So it's fine. Somebody's taking the decision. You give your opinion. Let the person take the final decision, good or bad. It doesn't have, it's the blame doesn't come on you. And you should think that even if whatever happens, you should accept it. Then you should not be blaming your husband, because then again, it's like not a good thing to do. So that's one way to navigate the whole ego issue. And of course, it means that you'll have to subdue your own ego for that first. That's a difficult thing to do. We can try. I hope that clarifies things a bit.
Thank you, Mataji. Mataji, I also have a question. So, Mataji, this narrative about Draupadi being outspoken and bold, I think comes from, some of the prevalent incidents that we have heard.
Yeah.
For example, I've heard about this anecdote, this incident. I'm not sure, and forgive me for my lack of Shastra knowledge, but I'm not sure if this actually happened, where when Duryodhan visited their mansion, he got confused by that mirage of water. There was this illusion and he thought that there was water, and then Draupadi said, Andega beta andha. So did this actually happen? And if it did, then what was the context, and in what context did Draupadi actually say it? Because a lot of people misquote Draupadi and say, Mother Draupadi, and say that she was very rude and outspoken, and that's why Duryodhan was the way he was with her, and
Yeah,
he did.
I mean, from what I remember reading in Mahabharata, she laughed. I haven't heard that she said this, but she laughed.
Yeah, she
And
laughed, and some people add onto it and say that she said that.
yeah, so the thing is, the women's quarters used to be different, you know. So they, even if this happened, maybe she was in a balcony and he would not have seen her, but he heard somebody laugh. So that's maybe she didn't intend for that to happen, or she wanted that to happen. I don't know that. But the point is, she was not being excessively rude or to his face. She came in front of him and said, "Ante ka beta tha," or whatever. You know, this dialogue that a blind person's son is also blind. I see. The thing is, we hear these things and we kind of build our own picture about how it happened. That's the thing. There's this incident about how Karna wanted to compete for her hand in marriage, and she said, no, he's not a Kshatriya, something like that. I've heard that such incident also. So what do you think? That, you know, the Swayamvar is happening and suddenly she gets up and says that, no, he's not a Kshatriya, he cannot compete. That's not what would have happened. Even if she had to object, you know, she would have told somebody that, no, how can he compete? And that person would have conveyed it to whoever was organizing the ceremony. So the thing is that, of course, she was a very strong person. She had certain opinions and things happened in this way. But the way it actually happens in Vedic culture is not something that we are familiar with. So we make up our own understanding of how it would have happened. And these TV serials don't help either, you know. They just portray whatever they think would have happened. But there was very strict separation between men and women. We know that, and we read about it in scriptures. So there's not much scope of Draupadi being outspoken in the sense that she'll come in front of the other men and start speaking. That's not how it. Even if she had to say something, she would have conveyed it to someone who would have conveyed it to the person. You see the difference, that it makes a difference in the whole culture about how people behave and talk. It makes a huge difference because people feel like, oh yeah, Vedic times also women used to speak, and what's different? We are just doing the same thing. If my father-in-law is suggesting that we should buy a house in such and such place, I'll immediately correct him and say, "Aapko nahi pata, wo builder to bilkul hi bekar hai." Like, you know, that particular builder is known to be corrupt, and you're making a big mistake if that's where you want to buy. That's not the culture. You cannot contradict an elderly person to their face. Even if you have to say something, you can wait and get expressed to your husband or your mother-in-law and express very respectfully. So you see the difference. The point is not that they did not say what they said, but how was it conveyed? How was it said? That makes the difference. Even when we hear how they speak in assembly, it's so respectful. Everybody, not just the women. You know, Lord Krishna used to touch Maharaj Yudhishthir's feet because he's older. That culture of respect, that's very important to maintain peace and harmony in society.
Thank you, Mataji. Mataji, if there's time, then there's one last question in the chat box. So this question is from Arishi Mataji. She says, how to actually find out our true spiritual nature, how to know that, yes, this service will give me satisfaction and I can satisfy Lord through this service the most.
That's a very, do you mean like your real spiritual nature as in what you are in the spiritual world? No, you're saying what service suits you the
Yes,
best. But
yeah.
that's, see, it depends. When in the beginning, we may not have the luxury of choosing our service. It's best to go with whatever service is given to us by our seniors. So, in a temple environment, there are so many services to be done, and we should volunteer. And whatever service is given to us, we should do. In fact, that's a good way to find out what our nature is and what service is suitable for us. So, you go ahead and do a lot of services, and then you will find that there is one service which is very dear to your heart. And if you're fortunate enough that you can be engaged in that service, then you can go ahead and do that more. And how do you know that it's dear to your heart? You're really able to do it well if it's, making garlands or making dresses or cooking for the Lord or serving senior devotees, whatever it is that you are able to do really nicely, chances are that that's the service that you should be doing because it matches with your nature. That's why you are able to do it very well. So then you can request the seniors to keep you engaged in that particular service. But how do you find that out? Just by doing service, you know which one really touches your heart. But that's also, it's difficult because it could be because of our conditioning, just like you may feel that, oh, this service is beneath my dignity. I'm a bit intellectual, so I should work in the office. I should be handling emails. So sometimes it could be our conditioning. So you have to be a little careful. It's good to do whatever service comes up in general. But if you're particularly good at something, there's no harm in requesting the seniors to give you that service.
So, Mataji, lastly, some Matajis want to reach out to you directly. So they're asking if you have an email ID or how can they connect with you.
Yeah, so my email ID is being women today. That's one word, BEINGWOMENTODAY, being women today @gmail.com. So you can always write to me on that, and then I can share my telephone number. We can also be in touch on WhatsApp. So you're most welcome. I'm at your service. Anything that you need to discuss, yes, we can talk one-on-one. That's the email ID. I will put it in the description box also. So it will be helpful if you want to reach out. Ritu Mataji, can you please put that in chat because
Yes,
for me to
I was
type.
just-
That's being women today, BEINGWOMENTODAY @gmail.com.
just did that, Mataji. beingwomentoday@gmail.com.
Yes, that's right. So please write on this email address.
He's also asking, Mataji, how can we join the classes regularly?
Yeah, so I have made this WhatsApp group. If you drop a mail, then I will, we can, coordinate how to be part of that. That there is a WhatsApp group on which I post the link. Then I will inform on that group about the daytime and then join the. So the way to be in touch regularly is through the WhatsApp group. I can only include you on that if you drop me an email because I can't publicly put my phone number on the internet. Thank you so much. Please drop me. So we will continue this series on women in Srimad-bhagavatam once every month. And I will let you know the date and time on that.
This is all from the chat box, Mataji.
Thank you so much, Prithu Mataji. As always, very helpful.
Thank you.
Today's session. Vachakalpatam Yascha Vasudhya Tanam Pavadebhyo Vishnudebhyo Namaha. Hare Krishna, Pranam. I'll see you again next time.